It's been 50 years since the end of one of America's longest and deadliest wars, Vietnam. The war cost the lives of 58,000 Americans and well over 3 million North and South Vietnamese. To commemorate the anniversary, the U.S. Department of Defense has launched a $15 million website aimed at providing what the department calls an accurate representation of America's involvement in the war. At first glance, the commemorative website seems like a simple reference tool, complete with links to declassified documents and even an interactive timeline detailing important battles and events of the war. But there are a few key aspects of this point in American history that are not included in the website, namely the anti-war movement of the 60s and 70s, which many regard as one of the most monumental shifts in social consciousness in U.S. history. Vietnam veteran Michael Marceau explains.
The protests back home got bigger and bigger. In fact, I was back in time for the big march in April of 1971, where there were over 500,000 people in the streets of D.C. Lyndon Johnson chose not to run for re-election in 1968 because of the anti-war movement that was growing and becoming much more visible. And that seems like what the DOD and Pentagon and government nowadays are trying to suppress.
Marceau isn't the only one who feels the new Pentagon website is incomplete. Activists, as well as journalists and historians, have cried foul over what they see as an attempt at sanitizing Vietnam War history.
Well, the website itself does not include at all the real history of Vietnam, of how the United States got into Vietnam, the untruths that were told to the American public for the Congress to authorize continuing buildups from 150 advisors in the 1950s to over 500,000 U.S. military in the height of the war.
In fact, the discrepancies in the Pentagon's website go even further, with omissions of the Gulf of Tonkin incident and America's use of the chemical Agent Orange, which left a lasting scar in Southeast Asia, as well as years of health problems for countless American soldiers. There's also no mention of President Nixon's failure to fulfill his promise of aiding Vietnam after the Paris Peace Accords in 1973, or the long-term impact that surviving veterans still endure to this day. But to counter the Pentagon's narrative, the activist group Veterans for Peace has offered an alternative called the Full Disclosure of the Vietnam War Project, which incorporates what the organization calls a fuller history of America during the war. The government's commemorative website focuses on American lives lost in Vietnam, instead of providing a truly comprehensive record that includes even the most uncomfortable of truths. And without this, the conditions faced by thousands of veterans today and America's continued military involvements abroad cannot be viewed in a complete context. Manuel Rapalo at the Vietnam Veteran War Memorial in Washington, RT.